Funny how people unsubscribe from your life without notice. One day they swear forever, the next they're gone. But hey, if you're here, hit subscribe. It's free, unlike loyalty. Thanksgiving was supposed to be a time for family, good food, and a much-needed break from reality. Instead, it became a night I would never forget, a night of quiet betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. We were all gathered at my parents' newly purchased home, the same house I had spent the last 2 months pouring my blood, sweat, and time into. They had asked me to renovate it, and without hesitation I agreed. New floors, plumbing repairs, fresh paint, rewiring. I did it all. Every free moment outside of work and parenting was spent covered in dust, making sure their home was perfect. Meanwhile, they sat comfortably in their apartment, waiting for the day it would be ready. I never complained. They were my parents. Helping them was simply the right thing to do. And in return, I asked for only one thing: occasional babysitting. Not every weekend, not even every week. Just when I truly needed help. My wife had passed away years ago, and raising my children alone was a battle I fought daily. Sometimes I just needed a hand. They had always agreed. Until that night. Halfway through dinner, my father set down his fork. The room stilled. "We're not going to babysit your kids anymore," he said. At first I thought he was joking. But the way he looked at me, calm, unwavering, certain, made my stomach sink. Silence stretched across the table. Then he continued. He spoke of exhaustion. How my children were too much to handle. And worst of all, he compared them to my sister's kids. He went on about how well-behaved, quiet, and easy they were. Unlike mine. I turned to my sister. She said nothing. Just sat there, smiling. Something inside me twisted. I had spent 2 months fixing up their house for free. 2 months of labor, sweat, and sacrifice, all to give them a perfect home. They never had to lift a finger. And now they had the audacity to tell me that my children, my own flesh and blood, were a burden. That they weren't as good as my sisters. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. Then with measured words I said, "Really? Then I'll stop fixing your house." Silence. My father stared at me, his face blank with shock as if I had struck him. My mother, ever the peacemaker, jumped in. She started weaving a tale about how I didn't understand how hard things were for them, how much they had done for me. She twisted the situation, painting me as if I had been forcing them into some kind of unpaid labor. Before I could even respond, voices rose around the table. Other relatives weren't having it. One of my aunts spoke first, her voice sharp. Talking about his kids like that? And right in front of them? That's wrong. Another uncle shook his head, adding, "Do you even realize how much he's done for you? All that work? You would have paid thousands for those repairs." And yet my sister said nothing. She just sat there, basking in the moment, letting the praise for her wonderful children wash over her like warm sunlight. I had heard enough. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Thank you for a great Thanksgiving dinner," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I truly appreciate everything." Then I turned to my children. "We're leaving." We grabbed our coats, heading for the door. As we walked out, I felt the weight of their stunned, speechless expressions pressing against my back. That night, in the car, my children asked me the questions I had been dreading. Why did Grandpa and Grandma say those things? Why do they always compare us to our cousins? I sighed, rubbing my cheek as I searched for an answer that wouldn't break their little hearts. Life isn't always fair, and sometimes even grandparents aren't the kindest people. My children stared at me, waiting for more. I met their eyes, steady and unwavering, and told them what mattered most. "But I love you both more than anything." That night, I went to bed exhausted. I had no regrets, but the pain lingered. The next morning, my phone was flooded, 52 missed calls. My heart pounded. 52. My mind leaped to the worst-case scenario. Was there an emergency? Had something terrible happened? With a sinking feeling, I called my mother back, bracing for bad news. The second she answered, she unleashed a furious tirade, her voice sharp with accusation. It was as if I had committed some unforgivable crime, like I had set fire to their house. "John, you need to come over. Right now." I frowned. "What? What happened?" She dodged the question, repeating her demand. My father took the phone next, his voice controlled but tense. "Just come, John. We need to talk." I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what this was about. But I had unfinished business there. My children's belongings were still at their house. I wasn't about to leave them behind. "Fine," I said. "I'll be there in an hour." When I arrived, I could tell immediately, nothing had calmed down overnight. My mother paced the floor, her arms folded tightly. My father stood in the kitchen, his expression unreadable. And my sister, who had suddenly taken it upon herself to become a key player in this mess, sat on the couch like she was presiding over a courtroom trial. The moment I shut the door behind me, the attack began. My mother pounced first. "John, don't you think you overreacted?" I stared at her. "Overreacted?" Then my father stepped in, his tone clipped but firm. "Look, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you can't just refuse to finish the house over this." And there it was. Not about the kids. Not about the hurtful words. The house. I almost laughed. It was so predictable, so transparent. I shook my head slowly. "So let me get this straight. You call my kids a burden, say they're too much for you, compare them to my sister's kids in front of everyone, and now that I refuse to finish the free labor you asked me to do, I'm the problem?" My mother gasped as if I had just insulted her soul. She clutched her chest, wounded. "That's not fair, John. We've done a lot for you. We took care of your kids for years." For the first time, my sister spoke up. "Mom, Dad, you really shouldn't have compared the kids like that." Silence. For the first time, my parents looked truly stunned. My mother blinked at her. "You don't think we were right?" My sister shrugged. "It's not about being right. You just shouldn't have said it in front of the kids. It's not okay." I'll admit, I hadn't expected her to say that. Not her. And for the first time that morning, I saw hesitation flicker in my parents' eyes. She wasn't exactly defending me. But she wasn't standing with them either. Instead of backing down, my father fixed his gaze on me. "John, we just want this to be over. You're not going to cut us off over something so small." I met his eyes without flinching. "Watch me." My mother gasped like I had just threatened to abandon them in a nursing home. My father opened his mouth to argue, but I was done. I walked past them, went straight to the closet, gathered my children's clothes and turned for the door. And that's when my mother said it. "John, you're being selfish." I froze. Selfish? 2 months of free labor. 2 months of sweat, exhaustion and sacrifice. 2 months of bending over backward for them. Never once complaining. Never once asking for anything, except for the smallest favor in return. And they had called me selfish? I turned slowly. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Selfish? You want me to work on your house, but you won't even look after your own grandchildren? You want my time, my effort, my energy, but the second I need something, it's suddenly too much for you?" My mother opened her mouth, scrambling for words. But I wasn't interested in hearing them. "You don't have to babysit anymore. But I don't have to fix your house either." And with that, I walked out. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. First, they tried ordering me to come back. Then when that didn't work, they tried guilt. Then they begged. Because reality had finally hit them. Hiring professionals would cost them a fortune. And the longer I ignored them, the more desperate they became. At first, I ignored their calls. Then I ignored their texts. Then came the guilt trip. My mother was the first to break. "John, we're getting older. We won't be around forever." Then my father followed, sending a long-winded message about family loyalty and how I was being unreasonable over a minor misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my sister remained mostly silent. I assumed she was trying to stay out of it. At least she had spoken up that night. But then, about a week after Thanksgiving, my father sent me a text that made me laugh out loud. "John, we forgive you. Can you come finish the house this weekend?" Forgive me? I didn't even bother responding. That's when they changed tactics. First, they tried to bribe me. My mother called, promising they'd start babysitting again if I finished the house. I told her no. Then my father texted, offering to help with the kids if I came over to talk things out. I told him no. Then they sent my sister. She called one evening, starting with small talk, asking about my kids, acting casual. But I could hear the shift in her tone before she even said it. "You know, maybe you should just finish the house." I let out a humorless laugh. "So I do free labor. In return, they insult my kids. And you think I'm the one who should back down?" She hesitated. "I mean, it's their house, John. They're just stuck in their ways. You know how they are." I exhaled sharply. "I do. That's why I'm not doing it." She sighed. "Look, I get it, okay? But they're never going to admit they were wrong. They're our parents." And that struck me. She knew they were wrong. She wasn't even trying to argue that anymore. She just knew they'd never say it aloud. I told her I had to go and hung up. That night, I thought about everything. All the years I had done things for them without expecting anything in return. The countless ways they had taken my help for granted. How they had acted as if it was my responsibility to help them, while making me feel like an inconvenience whenever I needed something. And that was the night I made my final decision. I blocked their numbers. 2 days later, my sister showed up at my house unexpectedly. I opened the door and found her standing there looking uneasy. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table, hands folded, eyes downcast. For a long moment she was silent. Then she sighed. "They called the contractor." A slow smirk crept onto my face. "Good. So they finally got someone to do it." She grimaced. "Yeah. But there's a problem." I waited. She looked me in the eye. "They got scammed." I blinked. She nodded. "Dad hired some guy." "John, they lost $10,000. I stopped laughing. 10 grand? My sister nodded grimly. "Wait, where did they even get that much money?" She hesitated before answering. "They borrowed some of it." That caught me off guard. "From who?" She bit her lip. "Uncle Mark. Aunt Linda. Even Grandma." I sat back in my chair processing. They had borrowed from family. Dug themselves into debt, just to avoid admitting they needed me. And now, they had a half-finished house and a $10,000 hole they couldn't crawl out of. I shook my head. "That's not my problem." My sister nodded slowly. "I know. And I told them that." I stared at her. "You what?" She exhaled. "I told them they should have just apologized to you. That they did this to themselves." For the first time in this entire mess, something shifted. She had defended me. She, the golden child. The one they favored. The one they trusted. And she had told them to their faces that this was their own fault. She leaned forward. "John, they're desperate. They still don't want to admit it, but they know they messed up." I crossed my arms. She shrugged. "And I think you should make them beg." I raised an eyebrow. "You really think they'd do that?" She smirked. "They don't have a choice." For the first time in my life, I felt in control. I slumped back in my chair. "So what exactly do they want from me?" She exhaled. "They want you to come over. Talk." I laughed. "Yeah. I've heard that before." She nodded. "I know. But this time they're not in control. You are." And she was right. I didn't go that day. I didn't go the next day either. I let them sit in their mess. Let them sweat. A few days later, my mother broke. Her text was long, rambling. Part apology, part excuse. "We may have been unfair. We shouldn't have said what we did." Then came the kicker. "We should have handled things differently, but you also overreacted." I laughed out loud when I read it. Even when they were desperate, they still had to place some of the blame on me. I ignored the message. Then my father tried. His was simpler. "John, we need you. Come back and finish the house. We'll figure everything else out later." No apology. Just "we need you." I ignored that too. That night, my sister called. "Okay," she said. "I think they're actually breaking this time." I smirked. "What happened?" "They told me to tell you they're sorry." I blinked. "Wait, they actually said that?" She hesitated. "Well, not in those exact words. But..." I exhaled. "Close enough." Then she said something that stopped me cold. "They asked me if I thought you'd ever speak to them again." I paused. For the first time, I realized they were truly afraid. They were terrified. Not just about the house, about me. For the first time, they were afraid they had pushed me too far. And honestly, they had. I agreed to meet with them. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear it from them. I told my sister I'd go on my terms. When I stepped into their apartment, the air was heavy with unease. My mother had been crying. My father looked exhausted. I sat down, crossed my arms, and waited. Finally, my father sighed. "We messed up, John." That was as close to an apology as I was going to get. He spoke about how they never intended to hurt me. How they were frustrated, exhausted, overwhelmed with the house. How they had spoken out of stress. Then, for the first time, my mother spoke. Her voice was small. "We love you. We love the kids." And for the first time, I believed her. I let the silence stretch before I responded. "I'm not finishing your house." My mother gasped as if I had slapped her. My father tensed. "John," he started. I cut him off. "You got 2 months of free labor from me. You had help whenever you needed it. And the one thing I asked for in return was too much for you. Now I'm done. I'm not angry anymore. But I am done." Silence. My mother looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. My father stared at the table. My sister just watched. Then I stood. "But I'm willing to move forward, if you stop treating me like I owe you something. If you stop treating my kids like they're less than my sisters. And if you understand that from now on, if I help you, it's because I want to. Not because you expect it." They nodded. Because they had no other choice. When I left that day, I felt like I had won. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. Things didn't suddenly improve. My parents weren't magically better people. I wasn't foolish enough to think they wouldn't test the boundaries again. But something had changed. They knew now, I wasn't their handyman. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't their safety net. And for the first time in my life, they were afraid. For weeks, there were no guilt trips. No unnecessary phone calls. Just silence. And then, a text from my mother. Can we take the kids this weekend? We miss them. I stared at the message. This was the same woman who had called them a burden. Who had compared them to my sister's children right in front of them. And now she missed them? I tried to dismiss it. But then I thought about my kids. Do you want to go? I asked them. Ben hesitated. Emily crossed her arms. Are they going to be weird again? I was honest. Maybe. They thought about it. Then Emily shrugged. I guess we can go. So I texted back. Sure. I'll drop them off at 5. When I arrived, my mother was different. She was trying too hard. Overly sweet, overly kind, like she was desperate to prove she wasn't the bad guy. My father was silent. I stayed just long enough to make sure my kids were comfortable. Then as I turned to leave, my father pulled me aside. We really love them, John, he said. We just messed up. It wasn't a full apology. But for my father, it was as close as I was going to get. I just nodded. Good. Then don't mess up again. That night, my sister called. I have to tell you something, she said, her voice serious. What is it? She exhaled. Mom told me something the other day. About why she really stopped babysitting. I sat up straighter. Because they were tired, right? She hesitated. No, that wasn't it. At least, not the whole reason. I frowned. Then what was it? She took a deep breath. Jealousy, John. I blinked. Jealous? Of what? She hesitated. Of you. Of how much the family stood by you at Thanksgiving. Of how close you are with your children. Of how you became the center of attention, when they're used to it being me. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. That doesn't even make sense. She sighed. It does, to them. You took the spotlight. You became the good son. The responsible one. And that pissed them off. I sat there trying to process it. My parents hadn't just been tired of babysitting. They had been bitter. Bitter that I was a good father. It was wild. It was sad. And it only reinforced one thing for me. They would never really change. I never told my parents what my sister said. It wouldn't have changed a damn thing. From that point on, everything changed. My parents never tried to guilt me into free labor again. They stopped assuming I would drop everything to help them. And most importantly, they never compared my children to my sister's kids again. They knew, if they crossed that line even once, it would be the last time they saw them. I had won. But it wasn't about winning. It was about respect. It was about showing them that love isn't about control, and family isn't about servitude. For the first time in my life, they saw me not just as their son, but as my own person. Someone who had boundaries, self-respect, and the power to walk away if they refused to treat me and my children with dignity. My story isn't unique. Many of us have dealt with toxic family dynamics, where love is conditional and respect is only given when it benefits the other person. But if this story resonates with you, let it be a lesson. You have the right to set boundaries. You are not obligated to tolerate disrespect, even from family. Self-respect is not selfishness. If you've ever been in a similar situation, let me know in the comments. Have you had to stand up for yourself against family expectations? How did it turn out? Let's share our stories and support each other. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, the hardest battles we fight are the ones within our own families.